It's crazy to me. I've been watching South Park for now about 15 years, and it can still surprise me with how far it's willing to push the envelope. I've been talking about this season of South Park that has delighted me. I think it's been one of the funniest seasons they've had in probably close to a decade. And I just didn't know they still had this fastball in them. It's kind of incredible to watch. And this week's episode, episode 4 of season 27, I kind of think they had it at their most refined. I legitimately think this is the funniest episode of season 27. And I was shocked with how far they pushed the envelope in this one. I was shocked with how far they went with it. It's crazy to me that it can still do that. This episode, Walk is Dead, is just, for my money, the hardest I've laughed at South Park in years. I was so delighted about it. And yes, does some of that have to do with some of the political satire elements and how far they pushed that envelope? It certainly does. The way they satirize Donald Trump and that experience is fascinating, and it's hilarious. I cannot believe they did what they did in this episode. But it's also just the little details of this episode. To focus this episode on Labubu's, which is something I've kind of had the unfortunate situation of kind of learning about the past few months. I had no clue what it was, and then somebody told me what it was, and then all of a sudden I felt like I saw them everywhere. This is one of the most like cringiest things I've said aloud and admitted on camera. The way that I learned about Labubu's was I saw Kim Kardashian's daughter, who made a TikTok of her ordering a giant Labubu without her mom's permission. I think it just like, she's on the phone. She just ordered it off Kim's phone. Like, that's how I learned about it. And like, that's like, that's my problem. That's my level of cringe. That's my social engagement that I have issues with. This episode, like, felt so classic South Park in the way that it satirized Labubu's, which was like reimagining them as like this, I guess, like tool of satanic worship is so insanely funny. One, the commentary in it of itself is great. Like this idea that everyone is so non-perplexed by the idea of children engaging with stuff on TikTok, doing demonic worships with Labubu's, and everyone's like, well, they're just going to do it because it's on TikTok. Like the lack of parental guidance and, how common it is now for children to be online. That stuff is just like so expertly explored in it in a way that's not in your face. When South Park is able to do it so well is when they can say it without ever actually saying it. I love this stuff. The Labubu stuff was so funny. Butters is one of my favorite characters. Having him as the focal point of this episode, I thought was delightful and just so funny. There was so many laughs in this episode with Labubu's. It's such a, when I heard the premise of this episode like a few days ago, my concern was they're going to make fun of something that they don't really understand, where sometimes I just feel like they latch onto something that they see that is popular online, and then they just kind of name drop and people kind of think it's funny. And that's kind of been my issue with the past few years of South Park, where I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel like Matt and Trey are as in touch with the culture as they once were. This season is proving that they are. I think one thing that's really helping them is right now, instead of having a week between episodes, they have now 2 weeks. Because if you don't know how South Park works, they put the show together basically in the time between each episode airing. It's not like a traditional writer's room where there's a few writers working on this episode, a few working on that, and it just pounds out for the 24 episode season with everyone kind of doing their own thing and then coming together to make this show. This is actually like, it is a collaborative effort. Every week, it's a reset. It is an instant reaction. I think giving this show 2 weeks between really allows it to just focus up and really polish some of the script writing. Outside of this season, I don't think they've had that, and I think some of the elements can get very lost. I am disappointed in this season so far in the fact that we haven't really had a lot of time spent with the central four of Cartman, of Kenny, of Stan and Kyle. I do hope that we get more of that child dynamic because they are the heart and soul of this show. They are the funniest characters. I want to explore them. But what we are getting trade off is Matt and Trey playing with fire in a way that, again, I just didn't know they still had that in them in this fashion. Obviously, they had the episode a few weeks ago, which is going to be remembered as one of the most remarkable events on TV. It is going to be one of the defining moments of comedy of the 21st century, with the way they satirized Trump for the season opener of season 27. I thought this episode was even funnier and pushed the boundaries even further. For instance, some of you may remember there was an episode really early on in their run of South Park where I think it was the record of swear words said in one episode. And I think maybe it was the word shit. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's been a few years since I've seen that episode, but they said it like something like 50 plus times. And at the time, it was such like a shocking thing because TV, you just didn't do that. TV has obviously evolved. The relationship with TV and the FCC is drastically different than it was 10 years ago, than it was 20 years ago. This episode, with the running joke, the running reoccurring joke of this episode being President Trump is fucking Satan, is like so remarkably funny. One, like, they do it right away in the episode where you get this thing and you're like, that is one of the funniest word plays that they've been setting up very smartly for the past 3 episodes, where he is quite literally in a relationship with Satan. And they also get to kind of call him out as be like, hey, yeah, he's fucking Satan. Like, the way they do it is so funny and it's so clever. And it's also just one of those like juvenile jokes that only South Park can do and only South Park can nail. One of the things that I love about South Park's comedy that I've always appreciated with Trey and Matt's comedy styling is the repetition of what they do, which is there is and I forget what the saying is, but it's something along the line of one time it's a joke, second time it can get annoying, third time it can get annoying. You get to a certain point and the joke becomes funny again. They understand that theory of comedy incredibly, where they just keep repeating a joke. They've done it a few times this season. The Christy Gnome shooting the dog was a great example of that, where they did that joke like 5 to 7 times in that episode with multiple dogs, and it only got funnier the more they repeated it. That is essentially what this episode does with that phrase, Donald Trump is fucking Satan. Which, again, it's a crazy thing to put out there. With how vindictive, with how ferocious this administration has been, with how much they are wanting to punish their enemies and how that has been such a focal point for them, and how much censorship has been in battle the past few months with the current administration, to actively say that is shocking, especially when literally no one else is saying it. When every institution that should be calling out Donald Trump isn't doing it, when every media coverage is really becoming soft around him, like they are treating him with such fucking kids' gloves. It's so rage-inducing. The way that Biden was covered versus the way that Trump is covered. The way Obama was covered versus the way that Trump is covered. It's such an annoying thing seeing like CNN, these guys like actively talk about for years Joe Biden's mental decline, which was obvious. And for a while they tried to hide it. And then obviously they eventually had to admit it to the point that one of their journalists / correspondents, whatever he is on that channel, like wrote a book about it. You know when that book would have been important? In 2024, when you were telling us that it wasn't a big deal. The kitty gloves, though, that we put on this administration is shocking. The decline of this president is real. It is happening in our eyes, far more rapid than anything we saw with Biden. It is so shocking. Everything that he does is so hate-induced. It is so cruel. It is petty. It is vindictive. There has never been a scandal that he has that if any other human being in the world had, they would get ripped to shreds. And even the way when they praise him, it's like, oh, he was very professional at his job. He's the fucking president of the United States. Of course he should be professional at his job. To say that all is the fact that South Park is one of the few institutions left that is willing to say that is both an indictment on the current American landscape and the media that is failing this country, and also the goddamn gift that is South Park. That is the brilliance and joy that I get watching this episode. This is so embarrassing. I had to stop this video because I went on that tangent and then legitimately forgot what I was talking about. But what I was trying to focus on was the cathartic nature of the past few episodes of South Park, which is, again, the feeling of watching something, of laughing at something and being like, okay, I'm not going crazy. Other people in the world are seeing this. And I think there is something powerful about South Park being the institution that does it. Here's one thing I do want to say with that, and I want to be cautious on saying, South Park is not an institution that needs to focus in on the truth. This is not something that should be guiding American discourse. I see so often people get annoyed at the idea of South Park kind of like making this culture and American culture care less about politics and be like, it's the example of the turd sandwich versus the douchebag, which is one of the earlier episodes of South Park that I believe explained the 2004 election, which was people have accused that episode of making a generation not care about politics. South Park's a comedy show. People just need to understand that, and like, it is made to make people laugh, and it is to point out the flaws in everyone. With that said, I know there is this huge, like, kind of like online discourse going on right now with who is South Park's allegiances to. Is it a left-leaning show? Is it a right-leaning show? That stuff doesn't matter. I keep kind of like getting really mad when I see this discourse happening online. This is a show that is, I believe, able to, and the brilliance of it is make fun of everyone, but also is able to satirize somebody and show where some of their beliefs may lie. They're going after Donald Trump because of what their fears of freedom of speech and censorship are, and everything that he's done with Paramount, all the bribery that we've seen, the lack of non-compassion that we're seeing from the White House. Like, they're going after him because of that. Trying to put the responsibility on a TV show is foolish, and that's not what I am trying to do in discussing this. What I am trying to talk about is what a comedy show and what comedy can do, which is speak truth to power and enlighten and help people process something. I think that's what Matt and Trey have done so well this season, and I think it's just becoming more exemplified, and it's becoming more of a phenomenon because people are actively seeking that and want it on a daily basis. And it's problematic that in a times like this, the places that we find it is either through South Park, or for me, it's Jon Stewart or John Oliver or anyone like that, or it's other comedians that I like Mark Maron, like Bill Burr. Like, the fact that those guys are the ones who are actively speaking truth to power is the power of comedy, and that has always been the power of comedy. And I'm just, again, so grateful for what the South Park guys do. I think they're so funny. I just wanted to share some of my favorite jokes from this episode because I know I've talked a lot about it, like, on a big scope, like actual episode to episode. Like, in this episode, the hardest I laughed was one, the first time hearing the line, Trump is fucking Satan. Sean Hannity getting mounted on Fox News to like demonstrate how Trump would F Satan. I thought was very funny in itself as well. The Labubu ritual on TikTok and Christ being like shocked with what is happening, I thought was another really good joke. The hardest I laughed was when they get this rare Labubu and they summon a spirit that ends up being the devil. And the first person that pops out is Donald Trump, and the kids all start screaming, and then Satan pops out. And then, of course, there's this incredibly staged shot, which is a bunch of young girls running out of the house screaming, and then Donald Trump behind them. Such a great reference to the Epstein scandal and everything going on with that. I'm so excited to see where the season goes. They keep building it up. I mean, now Satan is pregnant with Trump's kid. Very curious to see who that kid is. I have a feeling whoever is going to be paired in that, they're not going to have a great time. Maybe it's Stephen Miller. Maybe it's something new. It'd be really funny if it was Eric Trump. We'll see. The fact that this is basically Rosemary's Baby, but in this case, Satan is the character carrying the baby. Like, I don't know. I'm so on board with it. 2 more weeks. I'm so excited. It's like I said, it's been so joyous of an experience to have South Park back in my life, to make me laugh this often as it does, which is the miracle of South Park. When I found them at their funniest, this is what they did. They reversed time and found that magic yet again. Again, they weren't bad. I've watched every season. I think there is still humor to be found in each episode and moments that work. It's just that the level of craft that they are at right now, it's kind of like, I'm a fan of the San Francisco Giants, and Justin Verlander is one of my pitchers. A lot of the season, he's not really great. And then he just has one game where he throws for 122 pitches, and I think it's like 1 run scored on him. And you're just like, oh my God, like this is like vintage Verlander, like he's reverse time. That's kind of how I feel about South Park while watching an episode like this, where I'm like, this is like the South Park that I fell in love with, and I'm glad that it's back in my life in this form. So that's my thoughts on this episode. I know I went pretty long on this. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more. Sorry if I got a little passionate or angry on there. I might turn off the comments depending on how some of this stuff goes, but make sure to subscribe to this channel for more. I have a review of Highest to Lowest coming out in a few days. So make sure to subscribe for more, and check me out on TikTok, Ben Talks Film, and you can also find this episode on my podcast platform. I'm on Spotify, Apple, all that. Ben Talks Film. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.